San Ysidro is a sleepy little district of southern San Diego. This former border town along the Mexican-American border is largely composed of Hispanic citizens and wholly unprepared for the level of violence one man would visit upon the neighborhood on July 18, 1984, when 41-year-old James Oliver Huberty entered a McDonald's and began a shooting rampage that would last for over 70 minutes. The attack remains the largest mass shooting in California history. So, what happened? I'm Andrew, and this is History's a Disaster. Tonight, we're taking a look into what was at the time the largest mass shooting in U.S. history, and still remains the largest in California history. And before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by Hot Dog Prints. Not even a sniper can put these dogs down. Now, James Huberty, this shithead, was born in Canton, Ohio in 1942. He developed polio at 3, which would lead to lifelong difficulties walking. In the 50s, the family moved to Amish country in Pennsylvania. His mother, Ickle, and that's a fantastic name, Ickle, not surprisingly, did not like the area and refused to stay there. Here, his nutjob of a mother would soon abandon the family, leaving him alone and feeling isolated and constantly pissed off. In 1962, he'd escaped the farm when he went off to Malone College in Canton, Ohio, to study sociology, where he would meet his future wife, Etna Markland. Not happy with sociology, he changed majors and colleges to Pittsburgh Institute of Mortuary Science. In 1965, him and Etna got married after he got his embalming license. He went on to work as an embalmer for a few years in Canton before deciding on another career change, because apparently he decided he did not like dead bodies that much. This time, he became a welder for Union Metal Inc. in Marcelon, Ohio. While in Marcelon, their 2 daughters were born, Zelia in 1972 and Cassandra in 1974. During this time, he started showing a bit of a violent streak, along with collecting an arsenal of guns and getting real deep into conspiracy theories. He was convinced the world was going to end soon and was prepping for some kind of doomsday scenario. Etna filed at least 1 domestic violence complaint after getting punched in the face. Co-workers said he constantly talked about shooting people, and during one argument with a neighbor over James's dog, he shot the dog in the head. Real stable behavior, and not in any way crazy or paranoid. By 1983, he'd lose his welding job and be forced to find a new way to support his family. After scrounging for work, he'd eventually relocate the family to Tijuana for a fresh start, taking with them only the most basic essentials, and of course, all of his guns. Everything else was left behind in storage. In Tijuana, he grew resentful of the Mexicans around him, unable to speak the language and get steady work. His feelings of isolation intensified. In January of 1984, they moved to the San Diego neighborhood of San Ysidro near the Mexican border. Huberty managed to get a job as a security guard within an apartment complex, but as with previous jobs, this didn't last long. On July 10th, he got fired from this job as well. The frustration of losing another job threw him into a downward spiral. Feeling all hope was lost, his already unstable mental condition was rapidly deteriorating. He did try to get help. He talked to his wife about his concerns and eventually made a call on July 17th to get an appointment to seek help. The receptionist that took the call took his information down and promised a return call within a few hours to schedule the appointment. The call never came. The receptionist put it down as a non-crisis call based entirely off his calm demeanor, which means it would be 2 days before they would call back to schedule an appointment. Huberty was extremely frustrated after waiting by the phone for hours, waiting for a call that would never come. Eventually, he got up and left the house without saying anything. He'd eventually come back within an hour, calm as if nothing had happened. The family had dinner and they watched a movie together. The next day, they took the kids to the zoo. Huberty made some distressing comments as they walked around. He talked about how his life was over and that no one cared since no one wanted to call back to help him. The most concerning comment was that society had had their chance. After leaving the zoo, they stopped for lunch at McDonald's before returning home. As Edna was laying on the bed, James walked in to give her a kiss before leaving. When asked where he was going, he said he was going hunting. Hunting for humans. Edna blew off the comment, thinking he was just in a depressed mood. He changed clothes and wrapped a 9mm Uzi, a Browning high-power pistol, and a 12-gauge Winchester 1200 shotgun in a blanket before leaving the house, telling his daughter Zelia he wouldn't be back. He hopped in his Mercury Marquis and took off down San Ysidro Boulevard, passing a supermarket and post office before pulling into the McDonald's parking lot just 200 yards from his apartment at 3:56 in the afternoon. The San Ysidro McDonald's was packed and buzzing with noise. Huberty entered relatively unnoticed, carrying death in his arms. No one paid him much attention until he pulled his shotgun on a 16-year-old employee, John Arnold. The assistant manager, Guillermo Flores, yelled at Arnold thinking it was some kind of joke. Huberty pulled the trigger and the gun failed to go off. Arnold blew him off and turned to walk away as Huberty stared at his gun. 22-year-old restaurant manager Neva Kane reached the service counter just as Huberty managed to get the shotgun to fire, striking the ceiling. Switching to the Uzi, he aimed it straight at Neva and fired once, hitting her below her left eye and killing her instantly. The Massacre had begun. He aimed the shotgun back at Arnold, firing it into his chest as he yelled for everyone to get on the ground. He yelled and snarled out threats as he cussed at the cowering crowd. 25-year-old Victor Rivera attempted to plead with Huberty, begging him to stop the attack. His pleas fell on deaf ears as Huberty yelled at him to shut up, shut up, shut up, firing shot after shot. Rivera's screams filled the restaurant. 14 shots later, he lay dead on the floor. The patrons tried to escape, hiding beneath tables and booths. Huberty was undeterred. His eyes settled on a group of 6 women and children huddled together. 19-year-old Marina Elena Comunero Silvas was shot and killed with a single shot to the chest. He turned his Uzi to 15-year-old Imelda Perez and her 9-year-old sister Claudia. Firing repeatedly, Imelda was wounded with a single shot to the chest. Her sister would not be so lucky. She would be killed after being shot 9 times. 11-year-old Aurora Pina was wounded when Huberty hit her with a round from his shotgun in the leg. Her pregnant 18-year-old aunt, Jackie Lynn Reyes, saved her life when she shielded her with her own body. For her bravery and selflessness, Huberty shot her 48 times with the Uzi. Her 8-month-old son cried beside his mother's lifeless body. Huberty shot him once in the back with his pistol, killing the child. He next turned his attention to the McDonald's play area, stopping only once to shoot a 62-year-old truck driver, Lawrence Herman Versluis. He continued on to the play area, spraying bullets into the restaurant. In the play area, he set his sights on a family hiding under some tables. Bliss Herrera, 31, was hiding with her 11-year-old son Mateo, while her husband Ronald, 33, hid 12-year-old Keith Thomas under the table across the aisle. Ronald and Keith were shot and wounded multiple times. Blythe and Mateo would not survive after being shot in the head multiple times. Under a nearby table, Arisdelcy Vargas, 31, shielded her 24-year-old friend Guadalupe Del Rio. Huberty shot the women multiple times, with Guadalupe being hit multiple times and receiving minor injuries. Vargas was shot once in the back of the head. She would survive the attack, only to die days later in the hospital. Exiting the play area, 45-year-old Hugo Vasquez was shot and killed with a single shot to the chest. Outside the restaurant, no one had any idea what was happening. Police had been called within minutes of the first shots being fired, but had not arrived yet. Lydia Flores, unaware of the horrors going on inside, didn't notice anything until she pulled up to the drive-thru window and saw the bullet holes and hearing gunshots coming from inside. She quickly threw the car in reverse and backed into a fence before ducking down to hide in her car with her 2-year-old son until the massacre was over. At the same time, 3 11-year-old boys were approaching the McDonald's to get some sodas. Someone shouted a warning to stop the boys, but it was too late. Huberty had seen them and opened fire with both his Uzi and shotgun. David Delgado died instantly when he was shot in the head multiple times. Omar Hernandez was shot in the back repeatedly and died minutes later. Joshua Coleman was shot in the back, arms, and legs. Seriously wounded, he laid still in the parking lot, playing dead, fooling Huberty and saving his life. 74-year-old Miguel Ulola attempted to open the door for his 69-year-old wife, Ada. As he opened the door, Huberty opened fire, killing Ada with a shot to the face and injuring Miguel. Holding his wife and cursing Huberty, he tried to wipe the blood from her face. Huberty fired again, killing Miguel with another shot to the head. At 4:10, Astolfo Felix pulled into the parking lot with his wife, 23-year-old Maricela, and 4-month-old daughter Carlita. They mistook the broken glass for signs of renovation. They realized their mistake when Huberty opened fire on the family. All 3 were shot and wounded, with Carlita being the worst, getting shot in the neck, chest, and stomach. They ran to get out of sight, Maricela thrusting Carlita into the arms of a stranger running from the scene and begging her to save her baby before she collapsed against the parked car. All 3 would make it to the hospital and survive the attack. Back inside, Huberty checked a portable radio, listening for news coverage. Hearing nothing, he turned on some music before starting up shooting again. In the kitchen, he found 6 employees hiding. He opened fire, killing 21-year-old Paulina Lopez, 19-year-old Elsa Barboa Fierro, and 18-year-old Margarita Padilla. 17-year-old Alberto Leos was injured by several shots but managed to escape to a utility room in the basement where he waited out the attack with 6 other people. Returning back to the lobby, Huberty fired shots at an approaching fire truck before turning his attention to the moans of pain coming from an injured 19-year-old Jose Perez. He ended his pain with a single shot to the head. 11-year-old Aurora Pina opened her eyes as she laid wounded, surrounded by her dead aunt and nephew. Huberty saw her and threw a bag of fries at her, cussing her out and shooting her 3 more times with his shotgun. Despite this, she would survive. He wandered around the restaurant, shooting up the place and firing into the bodies littering the ground. He yelled and screamed and tried to justify his actions during his nearly hour-and-a-half rampage. Outside, the police were waiting. After the first calls came in, police were dispatched to the wrong McDonald's. Precious minutes were lost before they realized the error. Mike Rosario was the first officer on scene at 4:07. He was forced back as Huberty fired on him and the ambulance that arrived shortly after him. He was sorely outgunned, armed with only his .38 caliber service revolver. Life flight crews were put on alert and told to be prepared to send in the helicopters. Within 5 minutes of Rosario coming under fire, a command post was established within 2 blocks of the McDonald's, and the SWAT team alert was issued. The McDonald's was completely surrounded by cops as medical personnel was put on full alert and choppers were called in. By 4:35, the first SWAT units arrived, taking up positions to the north of the restaurant. Within another 10 minutes, SWAT would have the building surrounded. 2 people managed to escape from the rear of the building at this time. They were quickly interviewed by police as they gave them valuable information on who was inside. The heavily tinted windows of the McDonald's prevented a clear view of the inside. Until now, the police had no idea how many active shooters were inside. By 5:13, a SWAT team on the roof of the post office was given the green light, the authorization to shoot to kill. Any SWAT team member with a clear shot was now authorized to fire. At 5:14, Huberty fired out the windows towards San Ysidro Boulevard. SWAT responded with 2 shots of their own, but with no clear picture, they failed to hit Huberty. Then, at 5:17, Huberty fucked up. He stepped in front of a door with a shattered window. SWAT sniper Charles Foster didn't hesitate. He fired his Remington rifle, sending a .308 round from the roof of the post office right into Huberty's chest, shattering his spine before blowing a 1-inch exit wound out his back. After an hour and 18-minute rampage, James Huberty lay dead on the floor of the McDonald's he wreaked so much havoc in. After firing nearly 300 rounds and killing 22 innocent people and wounding 19 others, the nightmare was finally over. The days following the massacre were filled with sorrow as the community mourned their dead. With the amount of wakes to be held, local funeral homes worked out a deal with the San Ysidro Civic Center to hold all the wakes there. Mount Carmel Church in San Ysidro held an unending chain of funeral masses. Within 2 days of the attack, McDonald's, ever eager to move on and open back up, completely renovated the restaurant and were ready to get back to business as usual. The community, not so much. They did not want the location to open back up. McDonald's eventually agreed to the request, and within 10 days of the massacre, tore down the restaurant and gave the property to San Ysidro with the only stipulation that no other restaurant go there. They would then open another restaurant a short distance away. They would also contribute $1 million to a survivors fund. This property sat empty for over 3 years as discussions on what to put there went back and forth. Multiple memorials were put up and taken down throughout the 3 years before the property was eventually sold off to Southwestern College, who planned on putting an extension center there. The only provision to the sale was that a 300 square foot area in front of the center be set aside for a permanent memorial to the victims. The massacre would also shake things up with the police department. At the time, they were wholly unprepared for a crime of this magnitude. This was the first mass shooting conducted by a single shooter, and police doctrine at the time was not enough to handle the situation. San Diego invested heavily in the police department for better weapons and more training. There was a large focus on getting in and neutralizing the threat as quickly as possible. As people started to move on and life got back to normal, family members of victims and survivors sued McDonald's for failing to protect them from the attack, which is fucking ridiculous. The lawsuits were eventually thrown out. The courts ruled that no business had a duty to protect patrons from an attack like this, and that any standard method businesses used to prevent and deter crimes would have been inadequate, since it was obvious James Huberty could care less about surviving. Edna and her daughter stayed out of the community for a few weeks before moving back to Ohio, and disgustingly, were the first ones to receive a payout from the Survivors Fund. The community was not amused by this. In 1986, she also filed a $5 million lawsuit against McDonald's and James's former employer, Babcock & Wilcox. The lawsuit claimed that a poor diet of McDonald's and the dangers of working with poisonous metal caused the attack. Yeah, okay. She would also attempt to sue the gun manufacturers, blaming them for selling guns to an unstable man. Unsurprisingly, none of these lawsuits were successful, and hopefully she hurt herself just at least a tiny little bit trying to jump through all those mental hoops to blame everyone except her husband for his crimes. And that was the 1984 San Ysidro Massacre, the largest mass shooting in California history. Thanks for listening, and if you liked the show, please consider leaving a rating or review on your app of choice. And you can reach out to the show at historiesofdisaster@gmail.com with questions, comments, or suggestions, as well as following the show on social media like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, YouTube, whatever. And share the episode. Your friends will love it. Take care of yourself out there. Chase that dream. Live for today, because tomorrow is never guaranteed. Thanks and goodbye.